Hi guys, and welcome to a kind of a bonus video because I had planned to include two replays in today's Your Replays and it didn't work out because I had so much to talk about regarding the Hetzer and prizes to give out and things like that. So this was the second game I had originally picked out to include in that replay because I was going to be talking about German tank destroyers and having one low tier, one high tier game with the Hetzer and the Jagdpanzer E100. Now, why? Why did I pick these two tanks? Well, not only were they German and low tier and high tier, but these two tanks, the Jagdpanzer E100 and the Hetzer, they actually existed or kind of existed around the same time because, as I mentioned in the earlier video regarding the Hetzer was a late development. It wasn't developed till 1944, at roughly the same time as the Hetzer had just gone into development because it was cheap and easy to mass produce and had lots of parts, and the parts that were available for the Hetzer were reliable. The reason the Hetzer existed was because of tanks like this, tanks like the Ferdinand and the Jagdtiger and the later Jagdpanthers. Heavier tank destroyers with huge guns, which basically had failed for Germany right up till then, especially the Ferdinand. But they were still talking about developing super heavy tanks and super heavy tank destroyers. So there's very little known. The design specifications for this tank are unknown. There's a lot of details that are unknown about this tank. Perhaps maybe even a little bit unfairly, a lot of people are saying that maybe this is kind of a wargaming invention, and maybe it is. Maybe wargaming were just short of potential tank destroyers to put in at the end of the German tank destroyer line. Now, this line is the original line that existed before the Waffenträger E100, but the Jagdpanzer E100 was the original big daddy when it came to tier 10 tank destroyers. I mean, you've got the FV 215B183 now, which can be as deadly, if not deadlier, but this was a very, very scary tank destroyer, especially if you found yourself in front of its gun. It was based on the E100 chassis, and again, historically speaking, what we do know, well, I should start with what we do know as opposed to what we don't know, because there's a lot we don't know about this tank. But what we do know is that in May 1944, just as the Hetzer had started rolling off production lines, Krups and Porsche, two major tank developers during World War II for Germany, got together, sat down together, and discussed the possibility of building a line of super heavy tanks. Now, Krups were working on a tank called the E100, and Porsche were working on a tank called the Maus. Now, these were super heavy tanks, but they also pictured maybe these tanks had being bed or platform for other types of vehicles, such as anti-aircraft weapons or tank destroyers. So they discussed the possibility of mounting a rather large gun, particularly this 170mm, on a Maus. And unfortunately that was rejected. So Porsche's plan to mount this gun on a Maus were rejected simply because the Maus was already an incredibly heavy tank, and by mounting this gun on a Maus and turning it into a super heavy tank destroyer would simply just make it completely immobile. It wasn't a fast mobile tank to begin with, but it would be completely immobile and impossible to ship or to move around via even the railway system. So the tank would just be too heavy. So they talked about maybe developing the E100 as a super heavy tank and using a 175mm gun on the E100. But unfortunately, before talks got very far, Hitler basically stepped in and cancelled the entire super heavy tank program. So unfortunately, the Maus was never developed further than a turret. The E100 was never developed up to prototype stage, and as a result, the Jagdpanzer E100, that was the tank that they eventually agreed upon, was never put into development either or started design because, as I say, the Hetzer was being built. It was very, very cost efficient and could be built in large numbers. And Germany's problem coming towards the end of World War II, where it just didn't have the raw materials, it didn't have the factories anymore. The factories were being bombed, and the tanks were just too big, too costly to manufacture, too complicated to manufacture, and basically all the prototypes that were being built, the super heavy tanks or the super tank destroyers, just weren't having the impact. They weren't Hitler's super weapons that he'd wanted. The Ferdinand had failed, the Jagdtiger was failing, so he basically said, nope, let's just stop all production of super heavy tanks and focus on tanks like the Tiger II. So yeah, tank was never developed, and that's pretty much all that's known about the Jagdpanzer E100. But anyway, we are here with Gentleman DZ. He is here on his Jagdpanzer E100. We are here on Swamp, and as I say, this is a very, very, very scary tank destroyer. Even though it is one of the original tank destroyers in the game, it's got incredibly poor camo rating. So basically, when this thing is spotted, it can be spotted from across the map. When it shoots its gun, it has no camo rating, but it does have this tank. It's all about the gun. It's not fast, it's not mobile, but it's got a gun that has standard AP. It has 299mm of penetration. It does 1050 alpha damage. Now, having said that, when I drive my Jagdpanzer E100, quite often what happens is most of my shots, or most of the shots I take or hits, tend to be lower than 1000 hit points. So 1050 is the average damage, but I tend to roll quite low. And this game, Gentleman DZ proves to me that you can actually roll high with this gun, because most of his shots are quite high damage shots. But here on Swamp, basically, Gentleman DZ is moving up into an incredibly strong position. It seems to be the new meta on this map. I see a lot of heavy tanks, a lot of medium tanks going to this position and just waiting instead of pushing up. Oh, first victim, and there we go. That's what this gun can do. That is a tier 10 heavy. That's another tier 10 tank, and half its hit points are already gone. 1117 hit points gone in a shot. The reload is actually very, very slow on this tank. It's actually a reload that's similar to some tier 10 arty. Well over 20 seconds if I remember correctly, but it is capable of doing huge amounts of damage. So, but as I was saying, the meta on this game, last few times I've played on this map, everyone seems to gather in this corner, and oh wow, and while I'm talking, an E75 just loses 1137 hit points. So it leaves the E75 on a one-hit kill for pretty much anything that can hit him. Huge damage. This is just such a scary gun, and with the new sound in patch 9.14 that's coming soon, this gun is going to sound even scarier when it fires. But yeah, as I say, a lot of tanks seem to be gathering in H6, which seems to have happened in almost every game I've been playing recently. Not much to shoot at the Type 62. And unfortunately, yeah, Type 62 does not know how lucky he was. The shot seems to have impacted the rocks in front of him. But Type 62 is a one-hit kill. He's only got 880 hit points, so plenty of latitude for Gentleman DZ to actually roll low and still one-hit kill him. But Gentleman's pushing forward. The other thing I forgot to mention about this tank is the armor, which is incredibly good. It's an E100 after all, so you can side scrape, you can angle, you got to keep that lower glacis hidden. Not worth taking a shot in the Object 704 now at this angle. It could be worth, you know, he could have penned, but I think he's probably planning to wait for a better shot. Oh, and there's a better shot, and there is another 1122 hit points gone. So yeah, 3 shots, and Gentleman DZ is on 3,376 damage done. As you can see, WN8 is only 1730 so far, so he needs to do a lot more damage. That's the consequence of having a gun that has high alpha. You've actually got to shoot it more than 3 times in order to get good WN8, but Gentleman DZ hasn't finished yet. So basically, enemy team have won the north. Gentleman DZ's team only sent 3 tanks up the 9-0 lines, and as a consequence, they've lost. He's just gotten spotted. As I say, the camo rating on the Jagdpanzer E100 is not good. But a lot of enemy tanks hovering around the D line, a lot of enemy tanks moving down the 9-0 lines because they've lost, or they've won that line, and that Bulldog is trying to spot. So, thanks to Gentleman DZ's damage to the tanks moving up to the castle at J3, it looks like his team have easily won that corner down in J3. And Gentleman is just setting up to take shots here. Waiting for tanks to appear. WZ-132, not much to shoot at, and the WZ knows he's been spotted, gets into cover before this Jagdpanzer E100 can do any damage. No arty in this particular game, and this tank loves games. Oh, there we go! Did I not say the Type 62 was a one-hit kill? Even 880 hit points required a low roll. But Gentleman DZ gets up to 4,256, but no arty in this game, and unfortunately this is just one of these slow, unmaneuverable tanks. If it gets into a big open map that RT seems to be or is involved on, then unfortunately this tank, isn't a lot of fun to play. On the other hand, I tend to play this tank like a heavy tank. I like to move forward, be with my heavies, stay aggressive. I think one of the best ways to play this tank is he going to go for the shot. 555. Oh, that was a very, very delayed shot. I think that may have been server lag or replay lag. Definitely seemed to be a very, very delayed shot. But, yeah, as I say, this is a tank that is very, very well armoured from the front. It can even cause, with a little bit of angling, tanks problems from the side and rear. Even light tanks can have problems penning this tank from the rear. Some light tanks, that is. Oh, another 1,025 damage done. He's bouncing the VK. But, yeah, the frontal armor very, very good. This tank needs to be played with friends. You need to play it with tanks around you. And I'm not saying platooned, but you need to basically stay with friendlies, because if this tank is isolated, it's very, very easy to take out. And oh, beautiful shot! Engine fire on the Conqueror. Conqueror was slow on the fire extinguisher. But once this tank gets flanked, once enemy tanks get to its side, get to its rear, it's very, very easy to take out, as are most forward-facing tank destroyers. It looks like Gentleman's platoon mate has retreated and has come back to support. They won the corner, now they've come back and they're supporting the other corner. And all of a sudden, the game has turned around. It is 9-10, kind of still 50-50. Technically, Gentleman DZ's team are losing. Gentleman is on 6,500 damage, but he's just been flanked, and this is what I'm talking about. Gentleman has left himself over here isolated. He was flanked by a T110E4, who is not afraid to be firing premium ammo, even though he had the rear of a Jagdpanzer, but I suppose he didn't know that. But there we go. Even standard AP takes out the T110E4 through the machine gun port, or the machine gun cupola. That is another 900 damage. So the side and rear of this tank, very easy to get to them if you're in any tank that has mobility at all. Really, the Jagdpanzer E100, it wants to stay hull down, it wants to hide its lower glacis, hope that enemy tanks aren't firing too much gold at its upper superstructure. Oh, an enemy Jagdpanzer E100 has appeared. Gentleman had a hint of a shot, but decides he's going to hang here instead. So two huge tanks taking on each other here, or taking each other on here. So Gentleman has switched to premium ammo, and that was probably a good idea. Maybe Gentleman wasn't sure whether or not he'd have a shot on the lower glacis, and even if he did have a shot on the lower glacis, he would have been shooting down at it. So he switched to premium ammo. Oops, there goes my keys. Premium ammo on this tank is 420 millimeters of penetration, so very, very good. Yes, you can angle, you can wiggle, but not against premium ammunition. So there is kill number 3. 9,000 damage done in the Jagdpanzer E100. But I have no idea how many shots he fired, but you could just see how scary this tank is. And as I say, it seems to be the new meta, that you hang around that corner up at H5, H6, and you basically wait for enemy tanks to advance down the 1-2 lines, advance through the middle, advance down the 9-0 lines, and you basically just camp there till they do, take them out one by one until the game is looking won, and then you advance. But just one tank left on the enemy team, an Object 704. I think that is a tank that Gentleman DZ put a shot in earlier. Yes, he's only on 118 health. He gets taken out by Seahorse, Gentleman DZ's platoon mate. And there we go. A Jagdpanzer E100. Maybe one of the oldest tier 10 TDs in the game. It may be one of the easiest tier 10 TDs to actually outplay, but it's just got a very, very scary gun, and Gentleman DZ proved it in that particular replay. So a very, very good result in the Jagdpanzer E100 for Gentleman DZ. He picked up his ace tanker, he picked up a Brothers in Arms with his platoon mate Seahorse, he also picked up high caliber. So 1168 XP earned, 9096 damage done, and 3 kills. It's showing why the Jagdpanzer E100 is still a very, very dangerous TD, even though it may have suffered from power creep. I mean, premium ammo is far more common than when this tank was first introduced. RT can still do a heck of a lot of damage to this, and because of a lot of fast mobile tanks that have been introduced since the Jagdpanzer E100 was, it can be flanked and very, very easily enemy tanks can get to its side and rear, and then the Jagdpanzer E100 is pretty helpless. But when it can stay hull down, when enemy tanks aren't firing a lot of premium ammo, and when it gets an opportunity just to keep firing that gun, it can still be a very, very dangerous TD. As I say, personally, I play it more like a heavy tank than I do a tank destroyer, but you know, Gentleman DZ is proving it's a tank destroyer just like it was originally supposed to be designed as. 11 shots fired, 9 hits and 9 misses. I think server lag cost a kill or cost damage. Missed a very, very, well, it was a difficult shot, but you know, fired about 2 or 3 seconds after the enemy tank disappeared, so I think that may have been some server lag in the replay. He spotted 2, damaged 8, destroyed 3, did 662 assistance, wasn't playing with a premium account, and still, even though he had to fire 2 premium rounds, or, well, you can argue whether or not he had to fire them, but he fired them. The ammo costs were expensive, but with a standard account, he had tier 10, firing 2 premium rounds, he still earned 27,500 credits, so first game of the day times 2, very, very good result in the Jagdpanzer E100. As per usual, I want to thank Gentleman DZ for sending that replay in. It's featured on the channel. I have featured this tank on the channel quite a bit, but I don't think I talked about its history. It doesn't have very much. Most of the information regarding this history, or this tank, is, let's just say, classified, unknown. Wargaming haven't released very much information, and as I say, the only thing we do know is that it was talked about. Krups and Porsche got together, they talked about mounting a 175mm gun on either a Maus or an E100, which would have created the Jagdpanzer E100, but Hitler cancelled the project before he could get much further. That's pretty much all we know on the official record. Whether or not anything else, blueprints or anything else exists, is unknown. But thank you guys for watching. I'm going to give away some Steam keys for this video. If you're still watching and you want a chance of winning some Steam keys, just leave a comment below. If you don't want a Steam key but want to leave a comment, just say no game. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.